Why does pure gold have 24 carats? In its pure form, as it occurs in nature, gold is not used for making jewelry. It is too soft. Before other elements are mixed into it, it has 24 carats. Where did this designation come from? A carat is a seed of the carob tree, Ceratonia siliqua, whose fruit is known as carob or St. John's bread. The seed has a very stable weight of 0.2 grams, and so it began to be used in the past as a unit of weight in trade. Today, in jewelry, pearls or diamonds are weighed in carats. But how did carat also become a unit of purity? In ancient Rome, there was a coin made of pure gold that was produced with a weight exactly equal to 24 carob seeds, about 4.5 grams. The system was still based on the duodecimal system, which was later replaced by the decimal 1, but for gold it remained. For example, 14 karat gold contains 14 parts gold and 10 parts alloy. What would happen if the Earth stopped rotating? The speed of rotation at the equator is a solid 1,670 kilometers per hour. If the planet were to suddenly stop moving, the consequences would be catastrophic. But what if it slowed down very gradually? First, there would be a collapse of air traffic. Satellites would not be in their proper positions, GPS would fail. The day would keep getting longer until one side of the planet experienced half a year of light and heat, and the other side a freezing night. Without rotation, the centrifugal force that shaped the Earth into a flattened sphere would disappear. That force also keeps oceans at the equator, so the Earth would pull them toward the poles, since that's where it has a shorter distance to its center. A single large continent would form around the equator. And since the air would also escape, we wouldn't be able to breathe. The question is, could it actually happen? The Earth is indeed slowing down, but only by about 2 seconds every 100,000 years. At this rate, it definitely won't stop by the end of its planetary life. Why does ice stick to your hand? Do you like putting ice cubes in your drinks in the summer? If you grab them with your hands, you're well familiar with that slightly unpleasant feeling of them sticking to your fingers. What's so sticky about it if it's just water? Our fingers are naturally moist and, of course, much warmer than ice cubes, which are around -5 degrees Celsius. So as soon as we pick up the ice, we slightly warm its surface, and the resulting meltwater connects with the moisture on our skin. That mixture quickly cools down and freezes again between the ice and fingers. That's how the ice sticks to the hand. If you want to avoid it, an old folk tip says to pour a little sparkling water over the ice. The carbon dioxide in the bubbles disrupts the sticky effect, which also helps if you don't want ice cubes in the freezer to stick together. In which food is there the most water? Are you already looking forward to summer and the season of refreshing watermelons? Since it's called a watermelon, no other fruit or vegetable must contain more water, right? Wrong. Watermelon contains about 92% water, which is just a bit more than strawberries, which are made up of 91% water. But that still isn't enough to beat the cucumber, which is up to 96% water content. So it wins not only among fruits but among all foods. Some types of tomatoes come close behind with 95% water. And how can something with such a high water content even hold its solid shape? In cucumbers, just like in other watery fruits, the answer lies in strong cell walls. Thanks to water pressure, they stay firm and tense as needed. Why does a camel have 2 humps and a dromedary only 1? The well-known desert animals do not carry water in the humps on their backs, as some still believe. They store fat there, which can be converted into water or needed energy when necessary. But isn't it unfair that one has 2 reserves, while the other has to make do with just 1? In reality, both of them actually have, in a way, 2 humps. In the prenatal stage, the fetus of a dromedary develops 2 humps like a camel, but then one of them withers and merges with the other. Experts explain this by evolutionary history. In the past, 2-humped camels lived in the steppes of North America, but after the arrival of Europeans, they were wiped out. Fortunately, some managed to escape beforehand through what is now the Bering Strait to Asia. Over time, 2 species developed from them. Dromedaries settled in the hot and dry regions of the Middle East and Africa, where they needed large reserves of refreshment in their single large hump. 2-humped camels remained in harsher Asia, where they valued thick skin and dense fur more than fat. Why do we turn pale when we feel ill? Aren't you feeling well? You look a bit pale. Very light skin tone often signals illness, and during stomach upset, we can even turn a bit green. In short, we lose our color. But why? It all comes down to the flow of blood in our veins. Blood delivers nutrients and oxygen, so it concentrates mainly on the parts of the body that need it most at that moment. And in case of a health problem, this is even more true. As soon as our health is at risk, our face becomes less of a priority. We don't need it to survive. That's why it becomes somewhat deprived of blood. It works similarly in cases of fear. The literally greenish tint is partly caused by a chemical substance called myeloperoxidase. This often accompanies things like colds, the flu, or respiratory infections. What makes waves in the sea? Can you imagine the sea without waves? Whether they are small and gentle, or high and stormy, they simply belong here. But why do they even form? Even though it might seem that waves are water moving toward the shore, that's not the case. Waves don't carry water, only energy that travels through the water. And that energy is most often caused by wind. As it blows across the surface of the ocean, or even a lake, friction between it and the surface makes the water ripple. Waves caused by ordinary wind are small and harmless, but those created by a hurricane are much more dangerous. In other cases, waves can be caused by events under the water, earthquakes, landslides, or volcanic eruptions, which create tsunami waves. And last but not least, they are also caused by tidal forces between the moon, the sun, and the earth, and we then perceive them as the tides. Why do brides wear a veil? Not only long white dresses and a bouquet, those who want to be truly traditional brides add a veil to their outfit, which the groom lifts only during the newlywed kiss. But why do brides wear a veil at all? Veils have adorned brides since ancient Rome, where they were meant to protect the bride from evil spirits. If the spirits could see her face, they might cast a curse, and the marriage would turn out badly. Another meaning comes from the time of the barbarians, when brides were often victims of abductions. In such cases, the abductor would wrap her completely in a veil so no one could recognize her. The most well-known explanation, however, points to the tradition that the groom must not see the bride before the wedding. And it's not just about seeing her in her wedding attire. Since marriages were often arranged by parents for business or power reasons, the groom would see the bride for the very first time during the ceremony. And what if, by chance, he didn't like her and found out before saying "I do"? Since when have excavators been yellow? Imagine an excavator. What color is it in your mind? Most likely the same as the majority of plastic toy excavators, yellow. Although other colors exist, at least 3/4 of all excavators in the world are yellow. Why this particular color? The primary reason is, of course, safety. A giant yellow machine is visible even in the dusty conditions often found on construction sites. At the beginning of the 20th century, excavators were still gray, but such machines were easy to overlook, which could lead to accidents. That's why in 1931, the company Caterpillar began producing yellow ones. And since the color proved effective, other companies gradually adopted it as well. In the case of excavators, yellow simply became a symbol, just like red for fire trucks. This connection is now so strong in our cultural consciousness that it's hard to imagine otherwise. How far can the eye see? You're standing on a lookout tower, gazing across the landscape. Everything feels like it's within reach, yet at the same time incredibly far away. In such a moment, you might wonder, how far is it actually possible to see with the human eye? There are two possible answers. Either the question can't really be answered, or the answer is infinity. In the first case, we run into the fact that every eye has different capabilities. To see something sharply, the eye accommodates, that is, the lens flattens or curves to adjust to the distance of the object. Each person has two important points, the so-called near point, which defines the shortest distance from which we can read text, meaning the eye can still accommodate, and the far point, which lies as far as the eye can see without needing to accommodate. And for a healthy eye, this distance is infinity. But unfortunately, we can't see to infinity. When we look ahead, the curvature of the Earth limits us. When we look into space, we're limited by the brightness of distant objects or current conditions, or by a vision defect.